And when we speak of civil liberties and civil rights, people are beginning to understand that the most fundamental of these is the right to work in our society. And what is occurring in Guyana is that the government is making political capital out of the indefensible position of one who is either unemployed or is very close to the line of being unemployed.
I want to say to you all, in no uncertain terms, that this government is disrespectful to black people. And if people disrespect you, you have a right to disrespect them.
I am saying now that we have started, now that we have come together, do not sleep. Don't let us go back quietly into the night. Protest must be the order of the day.
Greatest kind of back. It's a blessing to be here. Greetings to you, Prime Minister. This letter is just for you. My intention was to give you this letter when election was true. But since Dr. Rowley was stepping down, I figured I couldn't wait. I'm reading it now before it's too late. I hear people say the PNM wasting the people's time. I hear people say the UNC will scrape every last dime. And some cannot choose between bad and worse, so I had to write this plea for the next leader of this country. 'Cause we need to see a nation full of success. We need a leader addicted to progress. Someone who's not here for the money and always giving us transparency. A leader with a clear destination and a direction that what we will see. Most respectfully, to whom it may be. Some people say bad politics slowing this nation down. And some people say implementation is where we does go wrong. But I say that they both are true, and that's what we need to see to fix our style of democracy. Some people say this moving world keeps on evolving. And some people say our infrastructure needs some upgrading. That's why I hope this letter you read for these issues to resolve. So sweetie auntie could start to evolve. 'Cause we need to see ministries that competent. Information you'll get in 10 seconds. Public servants who will answer the phone and give you advice with a pleasant tone. A bank run shouldn't take you the whole day. It's time we stop playing that what we want see. Most respectfully, to whom this may be. Ba 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 da da. I used to play I was sheriff when I was a little boy. But when I see they arrested Earl, I say, thank God my gun's a toy. It reminds me there are few ways up and 1,000 ways to fall. That's not just for one, but that goes for all. Many leaders in this land could be guilty or innocent, and it's hard for the people to truly know, so they will judge your intent. So before you walk in that big office, take a look at your character and have a long chat with Almighty Father. Cause we need to see power without ego. Take a ride on the bus, let people know. Don't be too much on your high horse, but be confident whenever time calls. Careful how much leaders cook one pot. Them thing have to stop. Like what we was see. Most respectfully, yeah. To whom this may be. I'm sure by now you will notice this is written in the future tense, in hopes that you are a leader of great poise and great resilience. One who structures TNT with its local policies, not from global powers. That is what I mean. I don't want you to think that this is right and what is wrong, but I want you to hear the people needs. Keep your ears down on the ground. And don't be like Gillian Bishop and not care what the people think, cause you could still learn from the babes and sucklings. Cause we need to see TNT in the World Cup. Innovation from young people non-stop. A culture industry to hang we emblem high, so everybody could get piece of the pie. A leader who strikes fair in them criminals, that is critical. Like what we was see. Most respectfully, yeah. To whom this may be. Lava, lava, lava,
A sympathetic international community. Since its return to office in 2020, the PPP government has attempted to disguise its authoritarian agenda, hiding behind the rhetoric of democracy and development, while taking advantage of a sympathetic international community, a compliant civil society, and a timid opposition. The rulers have run roughshod over the state and society. The ruling party and state have become indistinguishable. In effect, paramountcy of the party reigns supreme. WPA is therefore not surprised that the government has affixed a party slogan, One Guyana, to the country's passport. This is the most barefaced hijack of an instrument of the state for partisan ends. A passport, like the flag, the national anthem, and the Constitution, are meant to be beyond the reach of partisan tampering. Yet, the PPP feels bold enough to poke its partisan fingers in the eyes of the Guyanese people in what is nothing short of a national impasse. Guyana has had its collisions with authoritarianism in the past. Many patriots sacrificed their lives and liberty in the struggle to turn back that menace. Yet in our 7th decade of independence, the PPP, itself a former anti-authoritarian party, has engineered the return of a new and the more dangerous form of authoritarianism, one that is deeply immersed in oil. The sight of the PPP's leader every Thursday pronouncing on and announcing government policies, including directives to state agency, is as nauseating as it can get. The PPP leader conducts its press conference from the PPP's headquarters. Sometime in the past, the party office was located in a ministry. Now, the entire government is located in a party office. This is the height of paramountcy of the party. The country recently learned that the government has contracted an American lobbying firm to engage the American government. The firm is being paid a hefty sum of $50,000 per month, plus other incidentals. It is not clear whether the firm is lobbying on behalf of the government or the ruling party. One recalls that prior to the 2020 election, the PPP party paid huge sums to lobbying firms to engage the US government on behalf of the party. WPA asks the following questions. Is the lobbying firm lobbying on behalf of the party or the government? If it is lobbying on the government's behalf, what exactly are they trying to get the US government to do? Why is the country learning of this action 3 months after it commenced? What is the lobbying firm hoping to achieve for Guyana that our embassy in the US cannot achieve for us? The Cuban healthcare workers issue. WPA adds its voice in opposition to the attempt by the US government to punish Caribbean countries for their continued acceptance of Cuban healthcare workers to work in the region. We reiterate our decades-old position that the Caribbean should not become a pawn in the US-Cuban ongoing impasse. Cuba is a sister Caribbean country whose assistance to the region has been immeasurable. The Caribbean-Cuban relationship goes beyond ideology. If the Cuban workers were to be expelled, it would severely hamper the healthcare system in some countries, including Guyana. WPA therefore supports the CARICOM initiative to bring an amicable settlement to this burning issue. We feel a strong regional case could be made to the US authorities. We commend the principled stance taken by the prime ministers of Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But WPA is appalled at the unprincipled position adopted by the Guyana government. More than any Caribbean political party, the PPP should be more forthright on this matter. The party and government's penchant for putting their internal political survival over national considerations is plain for all to see on this matter. No government representing the broad national sentiments of its country would behave in such a shameful manner. It is nothing short of political opportunism. End of statement. Thank you. And good evening to you, and welcome to today's edition of Politics 101 on a Monday evening, a Monday night for persons like my brother Ashley, who are up there in Europe. And the WPA. Sorry about that. Yes. Good night to our viewers up there in Europe, in particular in the United Kingdom. And good evening to those of you who are on the East Coast of the United States of America, East Coast of Canada, and of course the Caribbean and in Guyana. All of you in Guyana, good evening. A special shout out to the people of Trinidad and Tobago who today have a new Prime Minister, Mr. Stuart Young, who has replaced Prime Minister Keith Rowley. Good evening to all of you. You know, when a Prime Minister steps down without being pushed out, you know, it's quite a thing. Leaders don't step down these days. They stay on and on and on until they're pushed out. Prime Minister Rowley determined that he has had enough and he has stepped away. And Stuart Young has taken over. Welcome to the position of Prime Minister, Mr. Stuart Young. Trinidad and Tobago are due to go to the polls later on this year. And Mr. Young would have the burden of leading the party in these elections. Reminds me of when Dr. Eric Williams died in 1981 and George Chambers took over and had to lead the party into an election. We shall see. We shall see. Good evening to all of you. We come on here tonight. Of course, Melissa Atwell is still in detention. Our government has not said anything of substance to the country. Everyone is speaking about this matter. Everyone, well, those who are on one side of the political fence is pointing fingers at the government. Ms. Atwell, according to reports, is due to go before a judge in June. That's about 3 months from now. Of course, she will be expected to go before another judge for a bond hearing to see if she will be released pending the hearing in June. The PNC, the AFC, and today the WPA all have expressed concerns about Ms. Atwell. and what has transpired there. We come on here also tonight as we hear that a second university has pulled out of the goal scholarship, what has now become the goal debacle. And it seems just as the University of Staffordshire could not have pulled out because they were never consulted, they were never part of the program. Another university has also expressed the same position. Oh, what a tangled web we weave. Good evening to all of you. We started out tonight with one of the young bards of Trinidad and Tobago, young Helen Francis, who won the Calypso Monarch this year with the Haunting Calypso, to whom it may be. A letter to the incoming Prime Minister on how to conduct himself. Very apt for our country. Helen Francis, this is his second crown. He won for the first time, I think, in 2016, or it may be later, 2016 or 2019. But quite an accomplished Calypsonian. He's also an independent senator in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. It's good to see the young people really keeping the Calypso art form going and really singing serious political and social commentary, even as the more party version of the music takes center stage. We still see social and political commentary remaining alive. Michelle Montano, who was the defending champion, I think he plays 5th this year, but it's good to see the Soca King going into the ring and singing serious Calypso music, because that is what the music is essentially about. The government has affixed its party slogan to our passport. Well, well, well. Well, well, well. The president every Thursday sits at Freedom House in his capacity of General Secretary of the PPP and pronounce not on PPP matters. Jack Dio doesn't speak on PPP matters. He speaks on government and state matters at a PPP press conference in his capacity as PPP leader at PPP headquarters. There is no separation between party and state. In fact, the party is perched atop of the state. That is called paramountcy of the party. And it's a violation of the Constitution of Guyana. Yet we take it for granted. We take it for granted. Jack Dio press conference. But Jack Dio and the PPP are breaking the law. They're violating the Constitution. Violating the Constitution. And they've gotten away with it for 5 years. And now they've done the unthinkable. Putting the party slogan in our passport. A passport like the flag, like the national anthem, like the Constitution, is a sacred state instrument beyond the reach of partisan consideration. Yet in our Guyana, The government does it. The government does it. And then, of course, we have the issue of the Cuban healthcare workers. The United States, in the continuation of its hardline position against Cuba, beginning with the trade embargo from 1961. It's the longest trade embargo in the history of humanity. 64 years, an embargo in Cuba. But now, the United States government is asking the Caribbean countries to expel the Cuban workers or face the wrath of the United States. Prime Minister of Barbados, outgoing Prime Minister of Trinidad, and our friend over there in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the Honorable Dr. Gonzalez, they've all come out and said, no. You can't walk like that. In fact, Prime Minister Motley said she's prepared to give up her visa to the United States. Very strong position. And in Barbados, there are no Cuban workers in Barbados. Our government, led by a party that was perhaps the closest friend of Cuba in our region, the PPP, which was a communist party, the PPP, which got assistance as a party from Cuba, they are not prepared to take a strong stance. Not prepared to take a strong stance. The Working People's Alliance, our party, said this morning that we believe that we can achieve both objectives. We were questioned about the dilemma of the Guyana government. On the one hand, the Cuban workers are here. On the other hand, we need the Americans to help us in relation to Venezuela. And we are saying it's not a choice of one or the other. It's that we need to achieve both. We need to achieve both. We need to keep the Cuban workers here, because if those Cuban nurses and doctors and other healthcare workers were to go back home, Guyana would be in a lot of trouble as far as our healthcare delivery is concerned. Jamaica's already said that if the Cubans were to go home, their healthcare system will fall apart. And so it's not one or the other, it's both. But the shameful, shameless government that we have are more concerned about their survival, and they're being politically opportunistic rather than taking a principled position and saying, look, Cuba is our sister. Cuba's given us assistance. This assistance is above and beyond ideology and politics. But we also need the Americans' help. And we want both. And we are going to go to the table and negotiate for both. The PPP is prepared, from what you're hearing from them, to let the Cuban workers go, to keep in the good books of the United States, perhaps thinking that the United States is poised to put them back in power as they did in 2020. Our brother Tacuma is here tonight. We have some technical difficulties, but he's going to be on audio because there is a problem with his video. Brother Tacuma, good evening. Are you hearing me? Brother Tacuma? Doesn't seem that Brother Tacuma is here. The audio seems to have gone. So that is the situation. Let's go to the Melissa Atwell story. We are not saying that the government is behind what is happening to Miss Atwell. It is the government who must say whether that is true or not true. We do not know. We do not know what Miss Atwell is being accused of, and we do not want to give our mouth liberty. However, what we are sure about, what we are very sure about, is that Miss Atwell has been exposing corruption in the PPP government. That Miss Atwell has been exposing documents, and that at least 2 ministers have sued Miss Atwell. And that on more than one occasion, the government has said that it will get even with Atwell. And so now that the American authorities have detained Miss Atwell, it is not out of place to conclude that the government must have something to do with it, especially since the government is not forthcoming. Obviously, as the government, they must know why Miss Atwell was detained. Let's see if Brother Ogun say. Brother Ogun? We're not hearing from him. The government must know. And they are not saying anything. And so the tens of thousands of Guyanese who have concluded that this government is behind it, they are not out of place. In any case, the WPS introduced another element to the story this morning. And that is, if a Guyanese national, someone who is as popular as Miss Atwell is, well known, she's an activist. If she is detained, our government is bound to go to her assistance. Our government is bound to ask what help could be given. She's a Guyanese citizen. And so therefore, our government, in the name of the welfare of citizens, because that is one of the first functions of government, is to look after the welfare of the citizens, is to inquire from Ms. Atwell what assistance the government could give. So far as we know, the government has not done that. That's an old thing. We go back to the 1960s, 1969. Caribbean students were arrested in Canada for staging a political protest at the Sir George William University. Our own Joey Jagan, Chetty Jagan's son, was part of that protest. And they were all arrested. And the Caribbean governments went to their assistance. I think they paid their bail and all of that kind of stuff. So it's not unheard of that when a citizen of repute, a popular citizen, the least the government could do or should do is to go to their assistance. And we don't know that this government has done so. We heard Mr. Jack Dio very snidely on Thursday said, we prepared to welcome her home because she's Guyanese. But that, to me, let the cat out of the bag. They, as the government, must know. So we await this government to speak up on the Melly Mel matter, to say whether they are behind it. And if they are behind it, then that is nothing short of political persecution. Nothing short of political persecution. We have the instance of the government going after Rickford Burke, sending marshals from Guyana to serve papers on Rickford Burke in America. We have the government complaining to the American government about Rickford Burke. So it is not out of place to arrive at the conclusion. In the meantime, Guyanese at home and abroad have been rallying around Miss Atwell. Tomorrow evening at 5:30, 5 o'clock, I think, 5 o'clock, Guyana time, there is a demonstration at the Square of the Revolution. It's been organized, I understand, by individuals, and all Guyanese are asked to go out and show their solidarity. 5 o'clock tomorrow evening in Georgetown at the Square of the Revolution. The Square of the Revolution. This government, if it is true, again, we are not saying we know because we do not know. But if it is true that this government is the actor behind the scenes, then the question must be asked, what has Miss Atwell done? What has she done for the government to make that move, that extreme move against her? We understand that the detention center that the sister is in is one that is where terrorists, people suspected of terrorism and other very major infractions are usually detained. What is it this young lady has done? That if it is true that the government has chased her and chased her and chased her, what is it she has done? I have not been a frequent follower of Miss Miss Atwell. I've heard stories every now and again. I may hear something that she says, but I have to confess that I've not had the time to spend looking at her page and or commentaries and so on. But from everything I have heard, is that she has been exposing secrets which have been credible, that there are people in the PPP hierarchy who allegedly have been feeding her with sensitive information, and she has been exposing that information. I understand that she herself at one time was a collaborator with the PPP, and so she knows the ins and outs of the party and the government. What is it that she has in her possession that the government is so afraid to see the light? We shall wait and see. We shall wait and see. In the meantime, as we've said, citizens have been raising resources to help in our defense. And tomorrow in Guyana, in Georgetown, at the Square of the Revolution, there is going to be a demonstration. Let me turn my attention to the question of the passport and one Guyana on the passport. You see, Guyana is a funny country. Let me say that, to say the least. I am a veteran of previous struggles. When the PPP, the PNC government behaved badly in the 70s and the 80s, I was part of the brigade that pushed back against that bad behavior. And I remember a lot of civil society organizations pushed back against that bad behavior. I remember the PNC flag was flown above the Guyana Court of Appeal. I remember the office of the General Secretary of the PNC was located in the Ministry of National Development. Those things were big scandals. Civil society organizations, trade unions, Chamber of Commerce, Bar Association, the PPP, the WPA, all the opposition parties were up against it. Some of us paid the ultimate price. Some of our comrades were murdered, assassinated. Some went to jail because we felt that the country was going in the wrong direction. And we had struggled too hard for freedom, for a government to behave in that manner. By the grace of God and the struggles of the people, we were able to bring things back to some form of normalization. I said here on this program last week that when you have those big changes, you have to have the political actors with the courage to do it. And we had a political actor named Desmond Hoyt, who at a critical point in our history was prepared to take the enlightened position and to say, no, I'm not proceeding with this. And so when the PPP talks about the return to democracy in 1992 and their role was minimal. The leaders in that struggle were the WPA and other civil society organizations, other Indian Guyanese leaders, African Guyanese leaders, including communities that supported the PNC, Linden, Buxton, Georgetown. These are people who voted for the PNC but said that our government was not behaving properly, and they were prepared to say so. I started out by saying that this country is a funny country. One of the things that has really pained me since 2020 is that some of these same people who hammered Burnham and the PNC, some of these same organizations, they watch the PPP take this country down that same road again, this time in the most vicious way. And they behave as though it's a normal situation. Sections of the media, they go there and in that den on Thursday, and Jack Dio behaves in the most lawless manner, breaking the Constitution, sits there as General Secretary in the headquarters of the PPP and pronouncing on state matters. And not one of the journalists has said, Mr. Jagdio, how can you be speaking as General Secretary of the PPP at the PPP headquarters about government policy? If you're holding a PPP press conference at the PPP headquarters, talk about the PPP position, not the government. You are there as PPP, not one journalist. And when Burnham did it, the journalists were all over him. Civil society were all over him. And today, the PPP is doing 1,000,000 times worse than Burnham. And these institutions are treating it as normal. That is what I mean when I say a compliant civil society. Compliant civil society. There are Indian Guyanese leaders who were hammering Burnham, and they're patting this PPP on its wrist for infractions that are a zillion times worse than what Burnham did. It pains me. It pains me. Because it speaks to a deeper prejudice in our society that they don't like to hear people like me talk about. That is, when it was a black-led government, it was open season for all and sundry to come out with their knives and their cutlasses. And when it's an Indian-led government, they do not come out even with a toothpick. Yes, they give them a little slap on the wrist. Yes, the Starbuck News, for example, writes some very biting editorials. But the very Starbuck News has banned somebody like me from expressing my view in the Starbuck News about what the PPP really is. They would hammer me in the Starbuck News 10 letters a day on how Lou David Hines is by talking about Lick Bottom, and the Starbuck News has not afforded me the right to reply. This is a Starbuck News that people like myself went to jail for so that they could come into being. Oh, for David de Carey's. He would have remembered that. David Ricky Carey's would have remembered that the David Hines of this world made it possible for the Starbuck News to come into being. But those who are now running the Starbuck News either don't remember that or choose to forget it. So on the one hand, they hammer the PPP in the editorials as they must. But editorials are read by some of us. Some of us. The average citizen doesn't read a Starbuck News editorial. The Starbuck News does not afford certain critique coming from certain quarters against the PPP. And those who founded the Starbuck News hammered Burnham. We have our Indian Guyanese brothers and sisters who were in front slaughtering Mr. Burnham and his government. Quite rightly, because they were behaving badly. But this government is behaving 1,000,000 times badly. And they give them a little tap on the wrist. They do not call for them to go. They do not chant people's power, no dictator, as they did under Burnham. We have the international community, and the international community always looked after their interests. And clearly the international community in 2020 and around that period made a decision that they are going to put the PPP in power and not the then government. To be fair to them, in 1964, they took a decision to keep Jagan out of power and to put the PNC and UF in power. This time around, they have chosen the PPP instead of the PNC-led coalition. Let's not fool ourselves. International community, they fix what need to be fixed. We know that the no confidence motion was not Sharon Das acting as a lone ranger. How do we know? Who whisked him away to Canada the next day? Who was at the airport to see him off? Which embassy personnel? Yes, the international community does what the international community always do in countries like Guyana. They look after their interests and they ultimately choose the government that they feel comfortable with. And that happened in 2020. It happened back in 1964. Let's be frank and fair. At some point, after what happened in 2020, and they installed the PPP, and I am not saying they installed them. I know they installed them, but it was the American government through the State Department that says the government was installed, not elected. They didn't say elected, they said the government was installed. They said it. And as they usually do, the international community, once they take care of their immediate interests, as things unfold, they usually say, you know, we think we're ready to change course now. And they said to the PPP, look, you got share power. You can't govern in this way. Clearly, when they installed the PPP, they were installing the PPP to advance their interests. But once the PPP got into power, it began to advance its own interests, which runs counter to the Western countries' notion of democracy. But by then, they had mounted the horse. And it's difficult when you mount an unruly horse to get off. And so, having made their bed, the international community for the last 5 years had to lay down in that bed, even though they recognized that the PPP was taking us in a direction that we should not go. So we have the international community, having made their bed, having to lay down in that bed for 5 years. The PPP, as we have noticed, prepared to give the international community anything they want in order to hold on to power inside of Guyana. That was the deal. So even though the international community recognized that the PPP is too much, there's not much they could do. Or not, well, let me take that back. There's not much that they have done. Because they could do more. But it's not much that they've done. So a sympathetic, a muted international community, a hypocritical civil society, which were prepared to hammer a black government. But when an Indian-led government is doing the same thing, they're prepared to basically just stab them on the thing. And then we have had a timid opposition. Let me be frank, I'm part of the formal opposition, well, informal. We're not in parliament, so we may not be considered formal, but we are part of the opposition. And I have to say that we have been timid. We have been timid for the last 5 years. The opposition to Burnham wasn't timid. They were prepared to go to jail and they were prepared to die. And some died, some went to jail. The opposition to the coalition wasn't timid. They were prepared to stick it to the coalition at every twist and turn. They stuck it to the coalition. They told the people, chase the coalition leaders out of their community. They cursed the soldiers and the police. They and their allies kept their money rather than invest it in the economy. At every twist and turn, they undermined the coalition. But since 2020, our leaders in the opposition have not been prepared to go to jail. They've not been prepared to die. They've not been prepared to stick it to the PPP. They have been timid, perhaps the most timid opposition in the history of Guyana. The slaves were not, enslaved people were not timid. They fought every day. Whether it's through malingering, whether it's through slave uprisings and rebellions, go slow, they did not sit down. The anti-colonial struggle, the leaders were not timid. The trade union leaders were not timid. The people were not timid. As I said, when we fought against Mr. Burnham, we were not timid. When the PPP fought against the they were not timid. But we, the opposition, since 2020, we have been timid. We have been the most timid opposition in the history of what we know as modern Guyana. And that's a fact. And I'm saying that not to cast aspersions or to indict other, I'm including myself in it. We have all been timid. Yes, some of us may have spoken up more than others. Some of us may have stuck our necks out more than others. But in the end, all of us have been timid. Every now and again, the WP has sought to wake up the country. When Dr. Ogunseye mounted the stage in Buxton and spoke facts, they shackled him. And the rest of the opposition did nothing than issue a statement. The other day, when I spoke the truth and nothing else but the truth, the leaders on my side paid attention to my language and avoided my message. They walked into a PPP trap because the PPP wanted to highlight my language and not my message. And you heard even opposition elements who backed me, who supported me, they qualified it by saying, well, the language they would not have used and all of that. I am not saying that anybody should embrace my language. I'm saying ignore the language because that's what the PPP wanted you to get into. Ignore it. Go to the message. But the kind of opposition that we have had since 2020 has been, just as an aside, Sister Simone Sanders resigned on air from the Democratic Party in the United States. Democrats up and down the United States are hammering Chuck Schumer for displaying the kind of timid leadership that we in Guyana have displayed. And the first day after he did it, his fellow leaders, the party members, they're hammering him. In Guyana for 5 years, we have been timid and we have not been punished by our supporters for it. Schumer is being punished as I speak. But in Guyana, we, the opposition, have been timid and our supporters have made excuses for us. They have not punished us. The sum total is that the PPP is brazen enough to say the weapons trooping is. I can go in the middle of Georgetown and shoot people and the opposition would do nothing. Remember Trump said he could go in the middle of Manhattan and his supporters will go by. Well, the PPP has reached that point. I will put one Guyana on the passport. I know not one damn thing will happen to me. I will not lose one damn vote. I will not see one damn demonstration in Georgetown. I am supporting the demonstration tomorrow for Melissa Atwell. I'm supporting it. But we didn't see the same demonstration when they bulldozed the people's houses in Moko. We didn't see the same demonstration outside of the East Coast when they killed Quindon Bacchus. We didn't see demonstration at the Square of the Revolution when they were hammering teachers. There is something that is partly sick about our side of the politics, where we know sickness on the other side. But there's some sickness on our side, some double standards. Again, I'm saying I support the Square of the Revolution demonstration tomorrow, but there was no Square of the Revolution in solidarity with the people of Moko, no Square of the Revolution in solidarity with the teachers, no Square of the Revolution in solidarity with Quindon Bacchus, no Square of the Revolution in solidarity with that young woman who was spat upon. And I can go on and on. There is something sick about opposition politics in Guyana. Maybe it's easy to do a demonstration for Melly Mel. Maybe. I don't know. I welcome the demonstration. I welcome. It's good to see people are going to go on the road tomorrow, and I encourage people to go out there in their hundreds and in their thousands possibly. But I have to point out that there is something double standard about us on the opposition side. And the impasse of the PPP is because they have read us. And they've read us correctly. If we were not so timid, there would be no one Guyana in any passport. I love Amanza. And I love the spirit and the strength that she spoke out against the one Guyana on the passport. People call me and they said, David, you know, you must think. And I'm congratulating Amanza. But Amanza, you're doing it after the fact. It was coming. I didn't know it was going to come in that form, but I know it was coming. We cry, we shed tears after the fact. Politics is not just about defense, it's also about offense. And part of political offense is about anticipating what your enemy is going to do and to stop them from doing it before they do it. Burnham would not have put a PNC slogan in a passport, even if he thought about it. Because when we were fighting him, we were like tigers. This PPP has gotten away with murder, and it has gotten to the point that it has set up the most authoritarian state since independence before our very eyes. When the PNC was in power, Jagan went into that parliament, throw away the mace, lick down this, lick down that. People tell you, oh, Jagan was such a peaceful man. The other day when a couple of parliamentarians on the opposition side lick down thing, oh, they behave badly, very bad behavior. The PPP used to behave nasty in parliament, and so it should be. When people have turned your parliament against you, upturn the parliament. Yes, they'll charge you. They'll call you this and they'll call you that. Be prepared to take it. You think it's two names they're calling me? But I've made my point. And I've put it on the agenda. All kind of things they say about me. People have to tell me that they're saying this, they're saying that. Somebody yesterday tell me, James Bond said when I'm in Guyana, I'm homeless. I don't have a roof over my head. When you're in politics, you have to be prepared to be beaten. But you know what? They're beating me after I finish beating them. They beat me with lies, I beat them with the truth. We in the opposition have failed ourselves and we have failed our people. We have made our job. Everything now comes down to an election in November. Everything comes down to that. We have not played our cards for 5 years. We have held all our cards. Hopefully we can play them at the election. And we have to take responsibility. All of us, not just the leaders, not just we the leaders, but you all the supporters have to take responsibility. I'm saying, look what is happening in America as we speak. The Democrats didn't wait for 5 years. They've said to Schumer, oh, it's over. That is not the kind of leadership for this time. That kind of leadership was for another time. Mr. Schumer, you're talking about institutions. When the other side has broken up the institutions, you're talking about the rules. When the other side has thrown those rules and flushed it down the toilet. What rules are you talking about? We in Guyana have stuck to the rules. What rules? So the PPP can thumb their nose at the University of Guyana. And not one university official, not one university student is standing with a placard at Turkine to say the goal is an embarrassment. The goal should be at UG. They've beaten up on UG, denied UG resources. Not one university student, not one university professor, not one university official. We take our licks. And the people have created a bogus university called Gould, which the outside world and to tell us it's bogus before we know it's bogus. We are sick. The PPP is sicker than us, but it doesn't mean that we are not sick on the opposition side. We want to reap without sowing. So said Frederick Douglass. Power concedes nothing without a demand. Imagine people, David Hines, oh, you should not have used that language. You shouldn't go down in the gutter. When people are below the gutter, you are telling me don't go down in the gutter? How will I engage them if they are down there at the bottom of the gutter? I will fly high and say, you're down there in the gutter. Let me reach and see if I can get into the gutter up there in the sky. Nonsense. I did not create the gutter. They created the gutter. And I'm saying that I want to fight you, and I can't fight you up in the sky. I gotta come in the gutter as much as I don't like the gutter. But that's where you are. Are we going to beat Venezuela in the sky with half a warplane, with Venezuela million warplane? Don't we have to fight Venezuela in a certain kind of way? Maduro is poking his finger in our eyes every day, and we are going to say, when Maduro go low, we go high. Well, keep going high. Keep going high. I love Michelle Obama. But in fairness to Michelle, Michelle was contextualizing what she was saying. Michelle wasn't making an all-time statement. When they go low, we go high. Well, let us keep going high. And they will be down there, and they will take away Guyana from us, as they've been doing for 5 years. Yeah, those David Hines cuss up, and the next week he cussed a bucket load of shit. And Guyana said nothing. Civil society said nothing. The media said nothing. ANOC said nothing. The ERC said nothing. The sickness in Guyana is stupendous. Stupendous. The passport. And there is more to come before election. There are more passports to come before election. There are more goals to come before election. Jack Dio said he did no business with the Mohammeds since the sanction. What did the Mohammed do? They put in public circulation 2 checks. And where they got 2, they got 200 more. But we in the opposition will say, oh no, we can't do that. That is not nice politics. We cannot do that. It will backfire on us. Jack Dio go down in the gutter, and the Mohammeds go right down in the gutter with it. They put the checks in the public domain. You go low, we go low too. Not because we are low, but because we want to catch you down low. Jack Dio, they give the fortune the Mohammeds have. It's Jack Dio they give them. And I am saying that if the Mohammeds are worth 100 billion, they give back half of that to the PPP already. The PPP is not going to give them 100 billion for nothing. They have already given back the PPP half of the 100 billion. I'm an optimist. I believe there is still time for us to catch ourselves in Guyana. Go out tomorrow to the Square of the Revolution. It's time. It's about time. It's about time. It's about time. And if it takes the Melly Mel thing to take us out there, let it be. But please remember that selective outrage is the demise of any effective opposition. Your outrage can be selective. Because the enemy will sidestep your selective outrage. If your outrage is all encompassing and it keep coming, they can't sidestep. Because when the Mex saw you, they're there. When the Mex saw you, they're there. When the Mex saw you, they're there. But when you are selective, when the Mex saw you and they're there, then they're gone. Come wrong so and go wrong so. My critique tonight is not a critique of any one leader or one party or two leader, two party. My critique is all of us, including myself and my party. All of us are guilty of helping to create the conditions for the advantage taking that continues unabated. And Mohammed is not going to help us. Mohammed is trying to help himself. And you all think Mohammed come as God to help you? Mohammed helping himself. As soon as Mohammed make a deal where Jack Dio and them won't turn you over to the Americans or won't take back the money that they give you, he all right. He done with running for president. He running for president in order to make a deal, frightening the PPP to make a deal. He has no interest in becoming president. But we are fooled because our leaders have not been brave enough. And so anytime we see anybody with a little flicker of bravery, we hold on to them rather than say to our leaders, you all are too damn timid. And I'm sure as you all told us that 4 years ago, 3 years ago, and serious, a lot of the timidity would have evaporated by now. Tonight, I come as frank as I can get. I'm not waiting until after I die. Martin Carter said, death must not find us thinking that we die. People gotta be prepared. Be prepared to if you believe in your cause, you have to be prepared to make the sacrifice. And our leaders, and by extension our followers, have not been prepared to make the necessary sacrifices for the last 5 years. And the PPP is up there lording it over us. They took our cash transfers and turned it into a weapon against us. Turn it into a weapon against us. We watch them slaughter the teachers, bully the teachers into submission. Even when the court stood on the side of the teachers, we didn't go to the square of the revolution and say, the formal courts are on the side of the teachers. Let us go to the square of the revolution in defense of our teachers. It is those teachers that we expect to vote for us. And it is those teachers who will have to vote for us. Stand with Melly Bell. We have to. But Melly Bell is one vote. If we stood with the teachers, we had 16,000 votes. I am not saying that we should not stand with Melly Mel. You all don't want to care my name. I'm saying let us stand, but let us recognize the hypocrisy. Go tomorrow, 5 o'clock, square the revolution, in your hundreds, in your thousands, and show the PPP that we could still fight. Show the PPP we could still fight. All is not lost. All is not lost. All is not lost. The struggle continues. The struggle continues.
And when we speak of civil liberties and civil rights, people are beginning to understand that the most fundamental of these is the right to work in our society. And what is occurring in Guyana is that the government is making political capital out of the indefensible position of one who is either unemployed or is very close to the line of being unemployed.
I want to say to you all, in no uncertain terms, that this government is disrespectful to black people. And if people disrespect you, you have a right to disrespect them.
I am saying now that we have started, now that we have come together, do not sleep. Don't let us go back quietly into the night. Protest must be the order of the day.